you for including me. So first, to get the sneak peek read of this fantastic volume, and also for the invitation to comment. I structured my comments, so I have some ideas that might be a little bit, they're probably a bit repetitive, but I think it could be perhaps useful for Jeffrey and for Rima, and then I have specific comments on Roland's chapter as well, both of which I thought were absolutely fantastic. So the first thing that struck me was that this book is an important, I think Melanie mentioned it and you mentioned it as well, is an important departure from the kind of dominant decade-long uprisings literature that has broadly focused on the successes and failures of the uprisings, or for kind of like looking for the potential for any kind of political reform to take place in some way or another. So it's always tied to some kind of regime category, and to see whether or not something can happen, something that's recognizable. So it was really refreshing to see a critique of it, and not just saying that this literature is, not particularly say interesting, but actually providing a framework for how to think of not just the last couple of years or the last decade, but the kind of more long durée thing. I really like how the individual chapters examine what the authors call revolutionary moments, to shed light on both the complexity of local struggles at different moments, and then link these to the regional as well as global political economic trends, particularly the insistence on predatory capitalism within a neoliberal context. So that was fantastic and very clear. I also very much appreciated the discussion of why the anchor is Lebanon in October of 2019, when the Thawra erupted, following the kind of ecological disaster, the wildfires, in the context of the deepening financial crisis, and also a series of very unpopular government propositions. So this, the contextualization of that moment was very convincing, but at the same time, it was clear that the book is not just about October 2019, nor about Lebanon's political present, but rather the beginning of an investigation that begins in 2019, or opens the opportunity to think about other things that are going on. And of course, 2019 was the year of a renewed kind of global large-scale explosion of protests. I believe it was Time magazine that called it the year of protest. So there was something going on globally. And I think that this book is a contribution also to that kind of discussion of what was going on in 2019 and thereafter. Then the book scopes across issues, space, time, and gives the reader an incredible detail and analysis about the particular individual local struggles that the different authors, the different chapters address, but also include different tactics and strategies employed by revolutionaries routinely. So not just at the moment of heightened contentious, but on a day-to-day kind of basis as well. And I think that's a very novel kind of analytical spin on mobilization. So the book links the 2019 protest escalation to revolts of the past decades, but rather than reproducing a kind of decontextualized linearity of events analysis. So this happened in 2012 and 14 and 15 and so on. The individual parts all market force widened social inequalities, increased injustices, and foreclosed the possibility for more just, equal, if not democratic, political potential. And so the volume addresses the complexity that comes with and within resistance, protest, revolution, and social movements by examining specific issues or specific struggles in a global historical analytical framework. And again, I just absolutely loved that approach. So, as I mentioned in my first comment, the book departs from the success-failure arc, or the binary rooted in regime-type category approaches. And this arc defines so much of post-2011 political science work on the MENA. Questions such as, why did X country democratize but not Y? Why did X actors embrace democracy, whereas the same actors elsewhere did not? And I very much agree with the analytical frustration of that kind of bifurcation of extremely complex political events. That is not to say we should only study the complexity of one political event. So it's not that these questions of why one place is, there's why one case results in a particular kind of system is not uninteresting and unimportant. It's rather that approach has reduced an extremely large volume of contentious politics either as irrelevant, especially when related to formal institutions, or just simply too messy to study. And so I think that this volume is an important corrective to that. And I think this is in the words of the authors of the introduction, the individual chapters seek to capture the duality of both clarity and confusion that comes with revolutionary moment. I'm of course always thinking through the Tunisia lens. So what happened on July 25th was a moment of insane clarity and confusion and fear, and this kind of mix of emotions that is happening that this volume is seeking to capture. So I'm extremely excited about that. Now, one more point about the kind of broader contribution is that the approach looks at politics beyond the kind of linearity that has defined so much of political transformation, or the aftermath of revolution, how protest cycles are studied, and so on. And I think that this is perhaps a really interesting thing for studies of mobilization that kind of themselves have generated a very linear process, whether it's about events or actors or kind of volume of participation. So it really makes us think beyond that kind of linearity to consider other things that are going on, whether it's the routine, the longue durée, or just the kind of competing things that are happening at these moments. Okay, to Roland's chapter, which was my original mission. And I'm really excited that I've been asked to comment on the chapter titled "Filthy Flows of Power, a Political Ecology of Disaster in Lebanon." So the chapter places ecological struggles in the context of a powerful nexus of political business elites, but also into a hegemonic development narrative in which development organizations propose disaster relief and reconstruction programs that are disconnected from the more comprehensive struggles and demands put forth by citizens. Roland is especially attuned to the centrality of Lebanon's history of disaster and state-making, bringing together natural and social entities to theorize the evolution of relations of power. And I hope that if there is a chance to develop the chapter a little bit more, that part could be developed in more detail, as it's really innovative, informative, and theoretically almost radical, I would say. So this idea that what role does disaster, whether natural or man-making, play in the construction of state or state-making? The study has a number of examples of the interconnectivity between ecology, disaster, and predatory politics. But one of the most compelling contributions is thinking of ecological catastrophes as well as man-made disasters, not as local issues solely, but in light of existing national power relations that are connected globally. So this lends rich explanation to why and how such disasters in Lebanon are reproduced, maintained, and more rapidly multiplied. So here the idea is not treating kind of similar to in the introduction, that it's not about treating the moment as something that should be exclusively treated, or this fetishization of the 2011 uprisings, applying that same idea to disasters. It's not a thing that happens in a vacuum. It's enmeshed in these kind of broader, powerful networks, be they social or natural as well. Roland provides a powerful account of the processes and actors behind the privatization of public services around waste, water, and energy, and the resulting asymmetry of ecological destruction that occurs with this kind of privatization, and from which disasters, again, natural and man-made, erupt. Especially noteworthy are legal stipulations that buttress this kind of move, but also the resulting opportunity for what is oftentimes referred to as the ABCs of international disaster relief and reconstruction work by bilateral and multilateral organisms or global expert NGOs. And I think this is where it plugs into the kind of NGOization debate that is also growing. So if there's some more room for expansion beyond the state-making part that I thought was so fascinating, I would suggest to develop in more depth the rich sector-based analysis for the non-Lebanon specialist, and perhaps link the theoretical insight of thinking of these networks of power as neo-hegemonic practice and language to other struggles around natural resource protection, environment, climate change, water, and food sovereignty in the region, especially keeping 2019 and onward in mind. And so here, of course, I'm thinking of Tunisia, Algeria, and Morocco, where these struggles are increasingly moving to the center stage of public protest. So they're not just to specific regions or to specific sectors anymore. Where citizen demands are linking into broader progressive and alternative political projects. The areas are phosphate, shale gas, and mono-agriculture have been over the last couple of years, so since 2018, 2019, probably the sites of some of the most contentious political struggles. And then one final point, the discussion around the NGOization of social and ecological struggles as part of a dominant ideological reproduction with linkages to these powerful elites and the public works projects that become available with the development language, in many ways frames, I feel, the multiple struggles that Roland, you're writing about in this chapter. So I thought that the NGOization with the development language is kind of a frame, and of course, a connection to national powerful business and political elites is kind of the framing of the chapter. And I think that would help guide the reader a little bit more. But even as it is, it's fantastic. So it was a pleasure reading it. And thank you again for having me on this panel.